Hello, everybody, and happy Monday. I am Dawne Leaney Davidson, and we're going to be talking today about apps and technology in your practice. As we go along, please feel free to ask any questions that you have, and I'll answer them kind of as we go. Find that works a little bit better, then everybody can keep their questions top of mind. Nobody forgets what they were going to say, and hopefully they'll be a little bit more relevant kind of as we go along. I will say, please bear with me. This is my first webinar in this format on my own. I'm used to, standing at the front of a room and being able to see people's faces. So please bear with me, but feel free to ask any questions or comments along the way. Yes, I believe, Danny, everything is being recorded, and it will be available at some point later on. So just give me a quick hello, let me know that everybody's good and ready to go. Maybe say hi where you're from. I'll just give everybody a quick second and then we'll get going. All right, looks like we got lots of people from Canada, which is awesome. Danny, Sue, Eric, Cindy, Jessica, Angela, Catherine, Robert. Awesome. So I am from Wasaga Beach, actually. I'm about 2 hours north of Toronto. So we generally kind of work out of Toronto and work with the Intuit guys a lot out of Mississauga. And I'm sure I've met a lot of you at events and at Connect or Get Connected events. Yeah, all right, so here we go. So how to use apps and technology to streamline your practice and increase your revenue. Oh my gosh, Cindy just said she's in Wasaga Beach with me now too. Very cool. All right, so my little motivational quote for the day is, either run the day or the day runs you. I don't know about you guys, but for me, definitely, if I don't have kind of a plan when I get into the office, it's really easy to get derailed by emails or calls or, seeing something on your desk that you want to address, and before you know it, it's 5 o'clock and it doesn't feel like you've actually accomplished a whole lot. So I do think it's really important to kind of have a plan, not just for your day, but also for your practice in general. And hopefully some of the things we'll talk about today will help you with that as well. All right, so we've got some basic key tasks in any bookkeeping or accounting practice that we do for our clients and to help them. Sometimes directly for them, sometimes just to help them work with us better so that we can provide a better product for them. So we're looking at things like document collection, data entry, expense reports, vendor payments, employee time tracking, payroll, including government remittances, bank and credit card account reconciliations, and then financial statements and cash flow forecasting. They're not all fun and they're not all sexy, but they really are all integral to providing our clients with a clean set of books. And thankfully, we have lots of tools that you can add to your toolbox that will help you provide these services and be able to leave the office on time and at least be able to leave the office at all. All right, so when we're talking about document collection, there are apps like Box, Google Docs, and QBO, Box, Dropbox, and Google Docs that will let you basically just share information back and forth or give you a place where you can store things that you can then access together. If you're looking for something a little bit more proactive, something like HubDoc will actually collect documents for you. Anything that has an online portal or an online account, like a bank, a credit card, utility bills, anything where you can get your information online, you can connect to HubDoc and have them actually pull the information for you so that you're not having to request that information from your client directly. The other thing you can do is use QBO or use QBOA to request documents from your client directly using the QBOA dashboard. And you can send them a request that will go either in product and or by email, depending on how you'd like to communicate with your client. And then they can upload the documents to their QBO My Accountant. portal, and then you have access to the information there. The one thing about that portal there is that you need to then download the documents yourself, so you can't just view them in the portal, which you can with some of the other apps. Excuse me. And all of these, QBOA obviously comes with your QBO subscription, but the other apps have both free and paid versions. So depending on the service that you're looking to provide, or depending on the amount of storage that you need, you can look at either using the free versions or paying for a subscription. Now, when we're looking at data entry, all of these examples, by the way, all come from apps.com, which is the apps portal for Intuit. And if you go there, especially for those of you who are Canadian, you can pick at the top the country that you're in. So you just pick the Canada drop down, and it will show you the apps that are available for you to use in Canada with your clients. And also, obviously, just in your own practice as well. So all of these examples are coming from that list. So they're on the approved list from Intuit. So for data entry, we have auto entry, enter my invoice, Entryless, HubDoc, Receipt Bank, Sasant, and Transaction Pro Importer. And those are just some of the examples. I'm not providing a full extensive list of every category, because there are hundreds of apps available to us to use. Again, the features of each of these will vary depending on what you're trying to do. If you're looking at importing a lot of, importing a sales report that you need to convert into individual sales transactions, then you can use something like Sasant or Transaction Pro Importer, which will let you bring in a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet, import it through their app into QBO, and then create a whole list of individual transactions to get that information really quickly into QBO. If you're using something like HubDoc or Receipt Bank, those will actually process the individual documents, whether it's receipt or an invoice. You then assign the information, the GL account, the tax codes, and push that through and publish them into QBO. Again, it happens very quickly, and it allows you to also attach the original documentation to the transaction, which then stays in QBO for you. All right, expense reports. Now, obviously, I don't know how many of you are actually doing the expense reports for your client, or if they're doing them and then sending them through to you. But there are apps that can be used to make that process a lot easier as well. Concur, Expensify, and Receipt Bank are a few. Receipt Bank is one that I've used quite a lot for expense reports, for client expense reports. And they're able just to submit their receipts using Receipt Bank, and then Receipt Bank will pull it together into an expense report and allow you to keep those receipts attached, to push it through as a bill into QBO so that you can then reimburse the employee for their expenses. Anything that makes it simple for the client to get information to you obviously is going to make your job easier, save you a lot of time and hassle having to go back and forth to get information from them. And I mean, nobody likes to be that one that's always, asking the clients for backup and asking them for documentation that you don't have. So the easier you can make it for them, obviously, to get things to you, the better it's going to be for everybody. It's going to keep your relationship a lot smoother as well. Vendor payments. Now, this is something, obviously, again, not everybody is going to be doing this on behalf of your client. A lot of them will be doing this themselves, depending on their level of comfort with the technology. But these are apps that can be used to send electronic payments that aren't going through their bank account, or sorry, not going through their actual bank. Some banks make it easy for you to make electronic payments to other vendors, and others don't. We know, especially in the Canadian banking system, it's not always as smooth as we would like it to be. And so these apps can help to make that process a lot smoother. So Plooto, Telpay, and WayPay will all help send vendor payments for accounts payable. WayPay will also give you the option of pooling money from different funding sources. So it doesn't have to come out of one specific bank account. You can actually pool money together from various bank accounts, even credit card accounts, to fund a certain payment or a series of payments. If you have a whole, whole check run that's going all together, you can pull money together from different sources, which for, especially for those clients that like to max out all their credit card points and, use their credit cards as much as they can, it gives them the option to do that. Plooto has a very easy, direct connection to QBO. TellPay works really well with QuickBooks Desktop. It does also have a QBO portal workaround. I'm not sure, connector, I guess. I haven't used that myself. I've only used TellPay with desktop files. Is there anybody using the QBO TellPay connector at this point? Nope. All right, I've heard sort of mixed reviews about it. Oh, Sue says that she has one client and it works pretty well. I think really for any of these apps and for any of these solutions, sometimes it works really well with a particular client or with a particular situation, and other times it just isn't a good fit. So it really comes down to finding something that works for you, that works for your client, that's going to make that whole connection, that whole relationship a lot easier. When you're making a decision on an app to use and trying to find a good one, obviously you want to look at the reviews for each app. You want to talk to clients and see what or to colleagues and see what their experience has been. But also do your research and make sure, you might have a client who uses it for a particular type of client and it works great for them. But the client that you're looking at using it with, maybe it's not going to be a good fit. So just make sure that you know what it is that you're looking for and make sure that you know the specifics about your client that might affect how the app is going to work for them. All right, employee time tracking and payroll. There's lots of different apps you can use to keep track of time, specific ones for employees, ClockShark, or TSheets, Time Tracker. There is also time tracking abilities in QBO. Again, depending on the number of employees there are, how specific they need the time tracking to be, you're gonna look at what's going to be the best fit for your client. Also, the number of employees that they might have, as some of these, they're going to be they're not going to be client subscriptions. They're going to be based on the number of employees, the number of people that are actually using them. So you definitely want to look at what those costs are going to be and what's going to make sense for the client. Apps like Payment Evolution and WagePoint will actually help you do the payroll. Once you've got that time information all together, then that will actually help you do the processing of the payroll. They can help with government remittances, either giving you ease of access to the reports or actually doing the filings for you. So again, make sure you know what it is that you need. If it's, you've got a large number of employees that you're having to deal with, look at what the costs are going to be and what it's going to make sense for you and the client. Now, with respect to the actual account reconciliations, unfortunately, these apps won't help you actually get the reconciliations done. You still have to go in and, and actually fill in the information, your ending balance, the date, and click through and make sure that you don't have any discrepancies. But these will definitely help if you're looking to get a large amount of information into QBO to be able to do your reconciliations. Business payments syncs with PayPal and with Stripe, I believe, to get the payments in. To get the receivable credit card payments in so that they're easier to reconcile, so you're not having to input them all manually. MoneyThumb and Receipt Bank will also help. They'll read the PDF of the bank statement so that you can import bank transactions. If you have, a client that you're doing a lot of cleanup for, you're doing something where there's a lot of bank transactions but not necessarily source documents to go with them at that point, whether they're, just the wire payments for, for bills that are sitting in there, whether there are a lot of bank charges. It will let you import a lot of those bank transactions really quickly, so you're not having to do that data entry. So then that way, when you get to the point of doing your actual bank and credit card reconciliations, everything's good and ready to go, and it just makes that process a whole lot faster. Now, financial statements and cash flow forecasting. How many people actually provide regular financial statements for their clients? Just throw your hand up. Oh, we've got a few. How about cash flow forecasting? Do many of you do that specifically, or is it just sort of a portion of, oh, good. So some of you are doing that as well. That's awesome. So there are quite a few apps that you can use for financial statements as well. One of the newer ones on the scene right now is Chata. Chata actually lets you, or even lets the client, type in questions to the app, just plain English questions that allow them to get information back out. Excuse me. It seems they had feedback from clients that they didn't always understand financial statements that they were getting from their accountants and bookkeepers. And so Chata lets them ask a question like, how much did I make last year? Or what are my sales last month? What were my sales last quarter? And be able to get that information really easily back out of Chata and pulling the information from QBO. Fathom and Spotlight Reporting do really nice financial statements. Sorry. Fathom will produce really beautiful reports that you can download into a PDF. You can actually even give the client access to their own portal where they can go online and access the financial statements. They're interactive, they have animation, you can change the colors, you can add your own logo so that it's branded for you and they understand that this is coming from you. And it just gives them a spot where they can go, they can take a look at the financials. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. It's not just, black and white pen and paper. And it just gives a really, really beautiful presentation and, summarization of everything that you've been doing and working on for them. All right, so at that point, that's sort of the first part of the presentation for the apps that we're talking about specifically with relationship to the client, things that you're doing for them and with them. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Nope, I guess not. All right. So we will just keep plugging through then. All right. So on top of the tasks that we do for our clients and the communication that we have with them, obviously there are also apps that we can use and technology we can use for our own practices. Depending on the size of your practice, depending on whether or not you have employees, obviously all of this is going to be different, based on the size of your practice and how many people that you have that you're having to deal with inside your practice as well as outside. So we have things like CRM, customer relationship management, scheduling, so scheduling time with new clients or with existing clients, recurring invoices and payments, and then also workflow and practice management. Is anybody currently using a customer relationship management program of any sort? We've got a really, really quiet bunch today. Maybe it's because it's Monday, or maybe it's because it's hot. Awesome, so we've got a couple people that are, a couple people that are looking. Catherine is looking for a less annoying CRM. Are you looking for a less annoying CRM or you have one? Catherine. Oh, we've got a good mix here. So we've got Client Track, HubSpot. Oh, the product name is called Less Annoying CRM. Interesting. I have not heard of that one before. So a few of the ones that are in the App Store, the Intuit App Store, we've got Constant Contact, Insightly, Method, Nimble, Zoho. Actually, I don't think Nimble is in the App Store. That's actually one that I've worked with. Again, you know, you always want to assess the app based on what it is that you are looking for and what it is that you need. Something like Nimble is really great for keeping track of clients, of contacts, business contacts. Nimble has a really unique feature where once you have somebody's email or you're on their Facebook profile and you hover over their name, Nimble will actually go out and search for all the information it can find about that person. So you can find their Twitter handle so that you can follow them on Twitter and see, you know, what else they're interested in, maybe see the types of accounts that they're following, so that you can connect with them a little bit better. Most of these apps will also give you the opportunity to easily communicate with your clients or with your leads, being able to email them directly through the program and then track, you know, track the conversations with them. Some of them will also track, you know, whether or not they've opened your email, whether or not they've, you know, if you've given them a link in the email, it'll let you know whether or not they followed the link. So just really can give you a lot of information about, you know, what it is that they're looking for, what they're interested in. Maybe even if you have, you know, if you've done an email campaign and you're not getting great feedback, using an app like this that follows the links, follows the clicks, follows their reaction to the emails, to the information that you're sending them, will also give you that feedback on what's working, what's resonating with people, what doesn't necessarily work, and then give you the opportunity to hone your message and maybe change things up a little bit. You can even be more specific about the people that you're reaching out to. Certain clients, you know, if you have tax clients and you want to get an email just to your tax clients to give them a certain amount of information, or you have small business clients and you want to make sure that they get certain information at, you know, at different times of the year. So a lot of that is really easily managed in something like a CRM, rather than trying to track, you know, through Google or something like that. Suzanne's asking what to use the most. I don't know that that's an easy question, actually, because it really depends a lot on the type of practice that you have. Again, whether it's just you on your own, or whether, you know, you're working in a larger firm. I've also heard of quite a few people using Zoho. We've tried using it, and we found it a little bit clunky. There's another great one that's new to the QBO store. Actually, I don't even know that it's in the App Store yet. They're still working on coming to market, by the name of Centrix One, which is run out of Montreal. And they do really, really beautiful email campaigns with lots, you know, really easy to plug in graphics and links to things, and really simple to use. It really, I'm sorry to be really vague, but it really depends on what it is that you're looking for and the size of your practice, the types of information that you need. I know a lot of people use 17 Hats, but I've also heard other people say that it doesn't do exactly what they want. So it also depends on whether or not you're just looking to keep track of data, you're just looking to keep track of, you know, name, address, phone number, well, maybe not address so much, but, you know, name, website, email, cell phone, Twitter handle, Facebook profile, that sort of thing, so you can communicate with people that way, or whether you're actually using it to communicate directly, and whether you're doing a lot of leads. Some of the apps are really great at monitoring, you know, where your leads are coming from and at what process you're at with, you know, with new clients, with proposals, and where things sit with that. Another benefit, I don't know how many of you know about Method, but Method is actually the only, I believe they're the only app that actually are trademarked with QuickBooks, and specifically QuickBooks Desktop, but they also work really well with QuickBooks Online. But they're really, really great. You can actually use Method to plug in information directly to and from your own website, so that people filling in, a contact form on your website, that information is pulled directly from their form and brought directly into Method for you to manage that relationship. So it makes, basically the point of all of these apps is really to keep you functioning efficiently, effectively, make things work smoothly. Scheduling. Oh, sorry. Afsana asked if Method is good for lead capture. It definitely is. And there's a lot of customization that's available with Method. Some of the apps are really, kind of plug and play, and what they, you follow their process to do what they do. Method I found is very good at helping you do what it is that's important to you. So when you sign up for a Method account, you work with a rep who will help you customize Method for what it is you need it to do. And there are amazing scenarios that they can handle that you wouldn't even think would relate to a CRM. I don't know that I have time to even get into a fraction of it, because it's a very robust program for sure. And there's a lot of things that they can manage. And they're very easy to work with, and they're very, very knowledgeable for sure when it comes to QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. I'm not sure about whether or not they have a free trial. A lot of the apps will have a free trial period. Some of them will have a free account for pro advisors. Some of them do not, though, as far as a free account for pro advisors, mainly because we are their target market. And so if they gave us free accounts, then they wouldn't be able to function because they wouldn't have revenue. One of those specifically is Arrow. Arrow at this point is only available to pro advisors, to bookkeepers and accountants, and so they don't offer free pro advisor accounts. But most of them do have a short trial period that will be free. Some of them also will have discounts, based on whether it's the number of subscriptions that you have, what number of clients you have on it, or the number of users you have. So really just make sure you do your homework for each one so that you're comparing apples to apples. All right, so just talking about scheduling, we have a question. I'm part of a group called QBHQ. We have questions all the time about how people schedule their time and how clients make appointments with them. We're really finding that a lot of people are getting away from, just having the client call up and make a time. They want to be able to, to block out certain periods of time in their calendar, and make it really easy for their client to come online and book appointments with them. So we've got a few here: Acuity, Calendly, and obviously just Google Calendar. Calendly is one that I use actually myself, where you can, you have a link that you can either provide to people. You can even put it directly into your email signature so that it's always available to your clients and anybody that you're speaking to. They click that link and it's unique for you, and they can go in and book a time in your calendar. So instead of having to do the back and forth, oh, I'm good on, for Friday at 2, oh, that doesn't work for me, can we do Monday at 1? It avoids that whole back and forth because they can see exactly what time you have available, and then they just book their own appointment. They can then, you then get an email notifying you of the appointment being booked, and then it also goes directly into your calendar and blocks off that time so nobody else can book that same time as well. One of the other nice things about Calendly is you can have, with the paid version, you can also have different types of meetings. So you can have, phone meetings, you can have virtual webinar type meetings, you can have live in-person meetings. And you can block off certain amounts of time for each type of meeting, and then also give yourself a buffer. So if you have to go to an in-person meeting, then you can give a buffer on each side to actually give you time to get there, which is great. So Sana is asking, which one is it that I can provide a time slot for? Provide a time slot for different time frames specific to them only. I'm not sure if there is an app that will do that, that you can give someone access to just specific spots in your calendar. If anybody else knows of one, please feel free to let me know. As far as I know, you can only limit that. And again, my experience is with Calendly. You can specify the amounts of time or the blocks of time in your calendar that are used for a specific meeting type. So I suppose if you wanted to, depending on how many different people you're talking about, you could actually set up a separate meeting type for that person, or maybe for that type of client. And then in the details or in the settings for that meeting type, you could actually specify that you only give them, certain days of the week or certain times of the day that are available. So that might be a workaround for that. I don't know that that would be available in a free version of any of these apps. You'd likely have to definitely have a paid version. Or you could always, if it's just kind of a one-off thing that you're giving somebody access to make an appointment, maybe you just set up one, and then when you're finished with it, you can change it back to something else. That might be another workaround as well. And I believe with Acuity and with Calendly, you can actually set it up to accept payment once they've booked a time as well. So if you have a system where, you make yourself available for consulting time, or for, if they're doing a webinar type of meeting, a Zoom meeting or something like that, but you require them to pay for that time, you can actually set it up so that they have to pay for it ahead of time, and the payment will be accepted and processed that way as well. So you're not having to chase them after the fact, or follow up with emails asking them for payment. You can make it all part of that process. All right, recurring invoices and payments. How many of you have regular monthly billing that goes out automatically, whether it's for value billing clients or for subscriptions that you're paying for? How many of you are using that sort of process at this point? Oh, we've got a couple. Oh, Sue is using Rotessa. That's awesome. This is definitely, once I got this working for the first time through QBO, it changed my life. I was always going through, I would have a recurring invoice that I would go through, and I would send it off to the client and be waiting for them to send payment back. What you can do through QBO and also InvoiceSherpa, Plooto, Rotessa to actually accept the payments. But in QBO, you can set it up as a recurring sales receipt. If you have credit card information for the client, you can also set it up with the credit card information in the receipt, in the sales receipt, so that the first of each month or the first of each quarter, that sales receipt automatically gets generated. Their credit card automatically gets charged. The payment is automatically recorded through QB Payments into your bank account, including the service fee that QB Payments takes out of the payment. And it's completely hands off. Once you've got it set up and you have the information there ready to go, it's amazing. It's life-changing, I have to say. And apps like InvoiceSherpa, Plooto, Rotessa, you can set up those payments to happen automatically. Credit card or EFTs. At this point, QB Payments does not do EFTs. It only does credit card. So with those other apps, you can also have the information going, or the payments coming through their actual bank account. Afsana says the QBO fee is high. Plooto is charging $1 per transaction. QBO is, I believe it's 2.5% plus 25 cents for EFTs. which as far as credit card payments go is quite competitive. Obviously, like I said, they don't do EFTs, and so that isn't an option. Plooto will do EFT from bank accounts, which is great. I know not all clients want to give you their credit card information, and conversely, some clients don't want to give you their bank information either. So again, you know, it's really going to depend on what's a good fit for you and also what's a good fit for your client. So now workflow and practice management. Now this is a little bit different than CRMs, and there is some overlap here because there are some CRMs that will also track your tasks and also track your recurring monthly or quarterly or annual tasks that you want to be able to keep track of. There are some CRMs that will just do the customer relationship management piece and are only keeping track of that sort of information. Conversely, there are also some apps like Arrow, Jetpack, Carbon, and Practice Ignition, which will help you with the workflow and practice management piece, but may not be a good fit for you when it comes to also keeping track of the CRM type of information. So, you know, I've said it probably 25 times already, but it really does depend on what it is you're looking for, the functionality that you need. We have a lot of QBHQ members who are absolute fanatics for 17 hats, and it does everything that they need it to do. And other people, it doesn't work for them. So it really depends on what it is that you need to keep track of. Something like Arrow Workflow is more than just practice management. Arrow Workflow also helps you document your processes. So if you're in a position where you're having, you have employees or you have subcontractors, or you're looking to expand and hire people on, and you don't want to have to do the training for every single task that you might have to do with a specific client, you can keep track of all of those processes in Arrow Workflow so that when it comes to somebody else, you know, you may be having to hand off a client to somebody else, they can pull up all those processes in Arrow Workflow and have step by step what they need to do to take care of that client or what they need to do a particular task for a particular client. They also have access to a library. So you don't have to write out every single step for every single client. If you have something generic like how do I, you know, connect a HubDoc account, or how do I set up a recurring sales receipt, things like that that are generic that you can use for multiple different clients and multiple different situations, Arrow will actually have that particular process in their library that you can just copy down and pull into your task list. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel. The other great thing about that is when you do that and when you access their library, if there's ever a change, because we know periodically QBO and other apps will change, you know, their display, or they'll change their menu a little bit here and there, so it's a little bit different than it was the last time you were in. Or maybe they've added a different step or moved where a particular button is. When you connect to that Arrow Workflow library, whenever there's a change made and Arrow makes the change in their library, it then automatically flows through everywhere that you're using that process. So you don't have to worry about updating it every time there's a change in QBO, which we all know happens periodically and generally at the worst possible time. So that's definitely a workaround for that will help. Susanna's asking if I do, I'm assuming that's QBO work. Do I use QBO work? I do use QBO work as well. To be honest, I'm just sort of starting to dip my toe into that because they've been doing a lot of work on it over the last year and a bit. When it first came out, you couldn't recur tasks, which as bookkeepers and accountants, kind of our whole bread and butter is recurring tasks and things that we do on a regular basis, whether it's monthly, quarterly, annually. And so that was kind of a big piece for me. And to be honest, it kind of turned me off that it wasn't there when they brought it in. So I was a little bit stubborn and refused to go back to it for a while. But they have made great strides and they've made a lot of changes there. They've definitely listened to the feedback from all of us users to make those changes and to make it a better fit for us and make it work better. They've brought in a lot of great features in the last few months even, I would say, where you can now add to your QBO client list not just clients who are using QBO, but your non-QBO clients as well. So whether they're desktop or whether they're on another platform. So you're not having to keep track of your non-QBO clients somewhere else. You can now have them all in one list, which is great. Another great thing is that it will pull things directly out of QBO, so that it keeps track of, you know, when the next quarter is and when their HST is going to be due or something like that. And so then it will pull that information into your chart in work to be able to keep track of that, and also let you know, if there's unaccepted transaction through the bank feed, you'll be able to see that in your dashboard there in work as well. So they are making a lot of changes and a lot of improvements based really on the feedback that they've gotten from us as users. And so, if you're not using it now, if you haven't looked at it in a while, definitely go back and take a look and see what they've changed, because it's probably a lot more functional now than it was even 9 months ago. So take a look. If there are things that you don't still like, or things that you would still like to see, and not just in work but in all aspects of QBO, make sure that you use that feedback button at the top of the screen in QBO, because they do absolutely listen to the feedback, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the more times they hear a request, the more likely they are to jump on that and put that at the top of their priority list. Oh, I was just talking about QBO work, was what I was talking about just there, Afsana. All right, another just sort of a bonus suggestion here. I don't know how many of you have heard of Zapier. Maybe throw your hands up if you have. Zapier is an app apart from everything else, but what it does is it makes apps that don't typically talk to each other, and it makes them talk to each other. So you can, basically it's sort of an easy way to do an if-then scenario. So if I get an email through Calendly from somebody asking me for an appointment, I would like to then maybe have a reminder show up at a particular time, or have a certain transaction happen in my pop-up email. So what I can do is zap them together, from my email to my calendar, or from one app to another, like Method and Arrow Workflow. You can zap those two together, so that when you maybe get a new client request, or you get a request for information on your website that's gone through Method, you have a new client that gets set up automatically through that integration of Method and QBO. I want to then zap into Arrow and have a task set up there to give them a call or to send them an email with some new client information. There are hundreds of zaps available. I couldn't possibly list them all, or even all the apps that are involved. They do, again, have a free version and also a paid version, so depending on how complicated you want things to get. I know there are people who are masters at this and can connect 4 or 5 different apps kind of in a waterfall. So that's definitely one thing to look at. If you have an app that you really love, but it maybe doesn't do absolutely everything that you want it to do, look at something like Zapier to try and make those connections yourself. You only have to set it up once, and then it will go. It's not like you have to keep going back to revisit it and set it up every time. But it just lets you get even more from the apps than what they even provide natively. All right, so when you're looking at which apps to use for your client or with your client, you want to keep in mind how comfortable they are with technology. I know we can all probably think of at least one client in our client list who will not ever use an app, no matter how great it is or how awesome you tell them it will be. They're just not going to do it. Some clients don't have the comfort level currently but it's just because they haven't had the exposure to it. And so once you're able to show them how it works, show them how much it's going to help them, they're going to be totally on board. And some clients will be up for anything. You always have those clients who are always kind of on the cutting edge and looking for the newest, greatest, best thing. So just obviously you have to keep in mind where your client is at and whether or not they're going to handle a little bit of a push to a particular product, or whether it's something that you are better to handle just on your own and not necessarily, show them behind the curtain type of thing. Another thing is who's going to be paying for the app. So is it something that the client has to set up on their own and manage the subscription? Is it something that you can absorb into the cost of your value pricing, which of course we're all doing, right? Or are you going to actually show it as a separate line item on your invoice? So are you billing by the hour and then you're adding, whatever their subscriptions are as a separate line item on the invoice for them to see? When it comes to the value pricing piece as well, it could be that, if the client signs up for the app, it's going to cost them more than it will if you sign up for it yourself. Either because of a pro advisor discount or, a bulk rate. If you have 10 clients on it, then, you'll get a little bit of a deal that the client wouldn't necessarily get. So keep that in mind too. Sometimes the client is willing to pay for it themselves, but you can get a better deal if you pay for it instead. And then you're managing the subscription and you can just build that into your own pricing as well. You'll also need to know if they need user-specific access or permissions. That is, if your client has employees that they don't want to necessarily have access to all different areas of that app. We have it with QBO. There's some employees that you want to be able to access everything. Other employees, you just want them to be able to go in and fill in their timesheet, and that's it. You don't want them to be able to see to see bank statements or reconciliations or financials or anything like that. So some apps will give you that ability to have user-specific access. Other apps will not. So one, just simple example is HubDoc and Receipt Bank. There is a lot of overlap in some of the things that they do. But when it comes to access, if an employee has access to a HubDoc account, they will be able to see everything that's in the HubDoc accounts, whether it's credit card accounts, bank accounts, all of that, as well as receipts or invoices that they might be uploading. With Receipt Bank, you are able to give user-specific access so that you can limit what they are able to see. So just make sure that you have that conversation with your client as well, so that nobody's caught off guard. Another question is whether or not it's going to work with the operating system that your client is using. So if it's an app that they're going to be using, on their phone or on their iPad, then you need to know that it's going to be able to work with whatever device that they have. For the most part, I believe the apps in the apps.com store for Intuit should be available on both Android and Apple. I don't know about Windows. I don't have any clients or even know a lot of people who use the Windows phone, so I don't know how pertinent that is. But also a lot of the apps will have web browser versions that you can use as well. Afsana, I'm just going to come back to your question when we get to the end, if that's okay. It's maybe a little bit of a longer question that maybe we can discuss when we're finished here. Another thing is whether or not there's a dashboard for you to manage. So whether, if you, for something like Receipt Bank that has a dashboard, I can go in, I can see all my clients listed there, or whether I actually have to sign into each individual client's account. So that might not necessarily be a big deal for your client, but depending on how many clients you are managing, that might be something that you want to keep in mind as well. And then, of course, whether or not there's a direct QBO integration, or if it's just a matter of having to download reports or download CSVs to import information into QBO. That's another thing that you definitely want to know up front and want to know how that integration works. One thing that we've noticed, because a lot of the apps have these short trial periods for you to test them out, that can be great. The only problem is it's hard to really test what that integration looks like. So one thing you can do, I don't know if everybody uses the My Books in QBO. I'm actually, unfortunately, my account for some reason is one of the few that I can't use My Books. My own books are still in an old My Company file, and they haven't been able to merge them together. So essentially, I have an extra sort of test account. So I can use that account as a test for these sort of integrations and just to see what it looks like. Even if you have, an extra account from, 10 for 10 days, if you've got an extra one that hasn't been used by anybody, use that to test some of these connections to see what they actually look like, because you can then purge the account afterwards and get rid of all the data that's there and just start again from scratch. So it's not a bad idea just to have an extra QBO account that you can use to be able to test stuff like that and then to not be caught out if you find that something maybe doesn't integrate or doesn't work exactly the way you thought it would. Oh, sorry. So then when you're looking at apps for your own practice, of course, you want to make sure that the benefits are going to outweigh the costs. Some of the apps can be quite pricey. And some of them are well worth that cost because of the amount of time that they save you. So you definitely want to make sure that you do that analysis and make sure that even if it is an expensive app, it's going to save you at least that much time, if not, double or triple that much time, so that you get the most out of it and it makes the most sense for you. Again, the user-specific access, if you have employees, then that might be something that you want to look at. Whether or not you can give employees access to only certain clients or only certain areas of your own practice's apps, because you don't necessarily want all your employees to be able to see everything that's going on in the business. Again, the same issues here as far as the operating systems, whether or not if it's just you, then, as long as it works for you, that's fine. But again, if you have employees that are going to be using them as well, you want to make sure that it's going to work for them. And again, same issues with the dashboard here. Are you going to have to log into multiple accounts, or can you keep everything nice and tidy in one place? QBO integration is great. The other thing you need to keep in mind when you're looking at the integration for QBO is whether or not it integrates with QBOA. So if you do have your own company file under My Books in QBOA rather than as a client in your list, you want to make sure that it's actually going to do that integration with QBOA because not all of them do. And then on the off chance that you're working outside of regular 9 to 5 Eastern time hours, which I'm sure not many of us do, but you want to make sure if you do have any issues that there's some sort of support available, whether it's a chat or an email in, whether they actually have a phone line available, something like Receipt Bank that's based in Australia, it's likely going to be a little bit easier to get phone hours just because they're in a much different time zone. So depending on, regardless of what time you're working, there's likely going to be somebody available. Yeah, so to keep those sorts of things in mind. Hopefully, once you get a package working for you, it's going to save you a ton of time, make everything much more efficient, be able to leverage that technology to make your job easier so that you can manage things quicker, manage things better, work smarter and not harder, right? We're always hearing that from Intuit. And I think that's really important. All right, so I'm going to go back quickly to Afsana's question here, and if anybody else has a question, feel free to throw them in. So she'd like to know, she's not sure how to present it to a client when you're talking about adding value. And so she's looking for suggestions on how to do that. I think this really comes down to the type of client it is and the relationship that you have with them. If there's an app that's going to make sense, I'll speak for myself. If there's an app that's going to save me time and make it easier for me to deal with that client, but I know that that client is very cost sensitive and not likely going to be too excited about me adding something to their package. If it's going to make that much of a difference to me, then I will typically pay the subscription myself, and maybe just the next time we do an engagement, increase their monthly rate or their quarterly rate a little bit to make up for that. I may even just leave it as it is because the amount of time that I'm going to be spending in that file is lowered. And so any cost that I'm out of pocket for that specific subscription will be more than offset by the time that I'm saving. If you're looking at an app that the client will be using directly, then if you can show them how much it's going to save them, how much easier it's going to make their life, how it's going to cut down on your request to them for, can I get that bank statement from 3 months ago? Because I can't reconcile until I have it. And they start getting annoyed because you're asking again and again and again. And you say, you know what, if we sign you up for something like HubDoc, then you're never going to hear me ask you for that again. I might have to periodically ask you to connect the account to your online banking, but I'm not going to have to keep bugging you for this. If you can find whatever the pain point is that's going to be solved for them by using that app, that's what's going to fix it for them. That's what's going to definitely get them to sign on. And that's going to be different for each client, depending on who you're talking to, depending on the client, depending on their their sensitivity to price and things like that. You just kind of have to find their language, what's going to make sense to them. HubDoc versus Receipt Bank. Do you have both? I do have both. It really does, it depends on what I'm looking to be done. HubDoc is a no-brainer as far as fetching bank account and credit card and utility statements. Receipt Bank is working on that, and I believe, I'm not sure if it's in beta or if it's actually live at this point, but Receipt Bank is working on fetch, but they will just be starting with invoices. So it will just be, like utilities and things like that. It won't actually get to the banks and the credit cards just yet. So HubDoc really, for $20 or $25 a month is a no-brainer for me. Receipt Bank, it depends on the client. There are some clients who I have on it to do their uploading themselves. There are some clients that I have on it and they have no idea because I'm taking documents that they're sending me either by email or by Dropbox or things like that and pulling them into Receipt Bank myself just to make the publishing faster for me. HubDoc does do some publishing of invoices and receipts. For me, a couple of issues have been the taxes. The taxes can be a little finicky, and also multi-currency. So if you have a client who does a lot of purchasing from the US, those US dollar invoices do not translate well when they're being pushed over into QBO, and it requires some manipulation in QBO directly, which for me with those clients just doesn't make sense because then I'm losing the efficiency of the publishing by having to go into QBO and fix them. So again, I do use both, but it depends on what pain point you're trying to solve for the client and also for yourself. And yes, the website or the webinar will be available. I'm assuming that you'll probably get an email after the fact. I could be wrong, maybe Shannon can help me with that. But it is definitely being recorded and I believe it will be available to you as well. All right, have we got any other questions or are we pretty much done? Just give you another minute. Oh, Shannon says, yes, we will provide the recording afterwards. All right, well, hopefully you got some good information out of this. And hopefully you've enjoyed our time today. And thank you for bearing with me and for putting up with my stumbles here and there. But again, hopefully you found it useful, and yeah, and you all have a good rest of your day. Thanks so much.